On a winter night in Los Angeles, January 6, 1987, a homeless man, as he usually did, was wandering the streets of Koreatown, searching for a place to shelter from the cold. Unbeknownst to him, tonight would be the end of his life. A young man named Joseph Martin Danks, armed with a sharp knife like a skilled hunter, hid in the hazy night and quietly approached the homeless man. Without hesitation, he stabbed him in the heart with the knife, instantly taking his life. Next day, the sun rose as usual, and the streets were filled with people. The body of this poor man was discovered, his face bearing an expression of terror, as if it were telling the story of that horrifying night. In January 1987, a serial killer emerged near Koreatown in Los Angeles, who crazily targeted homeless people and carried out a series of brutal murders. He usually stabbed his victims from behind with great force, and his methods were extremely brutal. The first victim was 40-year-old Christopher Michael Forsblade. On January 7th, his body was found on Vermont Avenue. The crime scene was gruesome. The homeless man's body lay on the ground, his heart stabbed and blood pooling around him. 7 days later, two new victims appeared. Their remains were discovered at noon and in the afternoon respectively. One was 58-year-old Isaac Davis, killed on South Menlo Avenue. Then, in less than 3 hours, 55-year-old John Charles Coble was killed on West 9th Street. Autopsy reports showed that they died from stab wounds, with vital organs ruptured and bleeding to death. 2 days later, a homeless man, aged around 43 and whose identity was never confirmed, was brutally murdered on West 8th Street. The next day, 64-year-old Almond Lord was attacked on South Kenmore Avenue. The elderly man survived the assault because the multiple serial murders at the time had already heightened the vigilance of the local homeless population. He had been on guard, and when the assailant attacked him, he put up a fierce resistance, causing the attacker to flee. He also provided the police with a description of the suspect's appearance for a composite sketch during the subsequent investigation. On January 20th, 58-year-old James Lyons was attacked in Manhattan Plaza. Like Lord, he was prepared for an assault. Although he was stabbed, he also survived. A few hours later, another homeless man in his 50s was killed on Southwest Boulevard, and his identity was never confirmed. However, in this murder, a witness saw the assailant in the act. He chased the attacker for 5 blocks and then borrowed a phone from a passerby to call the police. The police responded swiftly, cornering the assailant in a dead-end alley. In the end, the attacker made no futile resistance. Just before being arrested, he wrapped the murder weapon, a kitchen knife, in a newspaper and threw it into a trash can, but it was eventually found by the police. After arriving at the police station, the killer's identity was confirmed as 25-year-old Joseph Martin Danks. He waived his Miranda rights, which means he had the right to remain silent and the right to have a lawyer present during questioning. He directly admitted to 6 counts of murder. In addition to his testimony, the main evidence proving Joseph's involvement in the murders was the kitchen knife he discarded, as the width and length of the blade matched the depth and shape of the victim's wounds. Furthermore, a 34-year-old man named Christopher John Regal was released by the police, as he had been the primary suspect in these murders before Joseph's arrest. According to Joseph's statement, his motive for the murders was personal animosity towards the homeless, whom he considered to be dirty and disgusting. And the start of his killing spree was triggered by a homeless man named Edwin Trujillo. He claimed that this homeless man caused the shelter to be overcrowded, preventing Joseph from being allowed to stay there overnight, although the police could not confirm whether this incident occurred. In March 1988, the prosecutor's office offered Joseph a plea deal, but he initially refused it. During the trial, Joseph was detained at the Men's Central Jail, where he exhibited symptoms of paranoia. He was keen on constructing conspiracy theories surrounding his detention, complaining that his prison food had been poisoned by unknown individuals. He firmly believed that the famous actor Burt Reynolds and television host Johnny Carson were in the same room with him, defecating in his food. He also accused the prison management of psychologically torturing him by playing music through the cameras in his cell. During a court hearing, Joseph even attacked his lawyer with a makeshift knife crafted from a toothbrush and a razor blade, causing minor injuries. In December of the same year, on the advice of his lawyer, Joseph accepted the plea deal in exchange for the withdrawal of the death penalty. According to the agreement, on December 23, 1988, he was found guilty of 6 murder charges and sentenced to life imprisonment, with no possibility of parole for 156 years. Due to his deteriorating mental health, Joseph was transferred to Atascadero State Hospital, where he received treatment from June 1989 to March 1990. During this period, after a psychiatric evaluation, Joseph was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and antisocial personality disorder. He also underwent a neurological examination to determine if there were any suspected cysts in his brain, but the results did not reveal any abnormalities. After a period of treatment, his mental state improved, and on August 23, 1990, he was transferred out of the hospital to the California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi to continue serving his life sentence. Around 1 a.m. on September 21, 1990, Joseph was shouting loudly in his cell, claiming that he had killed his cellmate. A prison guard was alerted and went to check the cell, where he found the body of 67-year-old Walter Holt. That morning, during an interview about what had happened, Joseph stated that 3 hours after he was locked in the cell, Holt had fallen asleep, and he strangled Holt with a rope made from a bedsheet. He claimed that he killed the man because a divine voice had ordered him to do so. Obviously, this explanation was not credible to anyone, so Joseph was charged with first-degree murder. While awaiting trial, Joseph remained in prison, where he continued to engage in criminal activities. On November 12, 1991, a prison guard searched his cell and found a sharp plastic handle hidden in his mattress. On January 23, 1992, a prison guard conducted a strip search on several inmates, including Joseph. During the search, the guard forced the prisoners to take off their clothes. When he removed the handcuffs from Joseph and another inmate, Joseph used a piece of metal to stab the other prisoner in the head. On January 26th, another prison guard noticed smoke coming from Joseph's cell and immediately took him out to put out the fire. The cause of the fire was later determined to be Joseph setting his cell on fire with newspapers and magazines he had been collecting. On July 12th, during lunchtime, Joseph attacked a guard, beating him and attempting to splash a cup of hot coffee in his face. In early 1993, Joseph's trial for the murder of Holt began. During one of the court sessions, he attacked one of his lawyers, stabbing him with a sharp wire. On April 2, 1993, Joseph pleaded guilty to the murder charge and was subsequently sentenced to death. In his final statement, Joseph showed no remorse for his actions, claiming that he was doing God's work by killing the elderly man. He also threatened the judge and the prosecutor and told the jury members that he openly welcomed being executed. Joseph's mental condition was a cause for concern for everyone, but perhaps there was some explanation for it all. Joseph's story began on June 17, 1962, when he was born into a wealthy family in Bay City, Michigan. His mother was not his father's legal wife, but a nanny, and as a result, the innocent child was not highly regarded within the family. In fact, his birth was not valued by everyone. During her pregnancy, Joseph's mother continuously consumed alcohol, leading to his premature birth by 2 months. At birth, he weighed only 2 kilograms and had to spend 4 weeks in an incubator at the hospital. Even after returning home, he was not cared for by his parents, as the 2 irresponsible individuals continued to drink excessively after his birth. It was his half-sister and the hired housekeeper who took care of him. According to the housekeeper, on at least 2 occasions, he found Joseph crying and locked in a drawer by his mother. Additionally, there were reports of his parents giving him sedatives, causing him to be in a state of sleep for most of the time. Although his mother denied this, the couple's actions did not seem to convince people. In early 1964, his parents had a violent argument, during which his father beat his mother and broke her nose. This led to the angry mother leaving home with 2-year-old Joseph and living on her own. Over the next decade, Joseph endured a great deal of hardship. He witnessed his mother marrying a strange man, giving birth to 2 sons, and then constantly arguing with his stepfather, which led to the stepfather leaving home and abandoning the family. He also saw his mother being consoled by another man, and under the meticulous care of this man, she married him. In 1976, Joseph returned to Bay City with his mother and new stepfather, and then Joseph reconnected with his biological father and 2 half-brothers. At this point, they were already deeply in debt, having lost their house and jobs, and were living in a trailer, surviving by theft while using various anesthetics such as marijuana, LSD, and phencyclidine. A year later, 15-year-old Joseph was involved in 2 traffic accidents within just a few months, one of which resulted in a head injury. Although he successfully recovered after being discharged from the hospital, he showed signs of mental illness, which was not surprising. In fact, his half-brother also suffered from schizophrenia, as their biological father was both a drug user and an alcoholic, with declining memory. A year later, Joseph was arrested in Mexico on suspicion of drug possession. Although he was ultimately only fined administratively, his new stepfather directly prohibited him from entering the trailer and contacting his biological father and brothers, a wise decision because soon after his 2 half-brothers were arrested for drug trafficking. In the following year, Joseph dropped out of school and ran away from home. He began a months-long journey of homelessness, constantly hitchhiking between various cities. During this period, Joseph's mental state deteriorated rapidly, with symptoms of hypochondria and clinical delirium. He frequently moved furniture around the house and deliberately cut the electrical wires, claiming that someone was watching him through the television. He also accused his mother and other relatives of trying to poison him, so he refused to eat any food prepared by his family. He seemed to have a severe case of misophobia, obsession with cleanliness, washing dishes, and tidying the room multiple times a day. In addition, he was plagued by auditory hallucinations, as he claimed to be communicating with his deceased grandparents. Even though his family wanted to help him, he refused any medical assistance, insisting that drug addiction was a common phenomenon in society. He was also convinced that President Ronald Reagan smoked 10,000 marijuana cigarettes a day. Due to unemployment, he relied on financial support from his mother, but he suspected that his mother and aunt were colluding to print counterfeit money and threatened to report them to the police. In his spare time, he hung out with local homeless people, and over time, he gradually stopped taking care of his appearance, becoming slovenly and unhygienic. In October 1982, Joseph appeared at an elementary school in New Jersey, dressed in tattered clothes, causing a panic. He was forcibly taken to the police station. After returning to Michigan, he again complained of experiencing hallucinations. Having committed several minor offenses, Joseph was involuntarily committed to a mental hospital for treatment. Although he managed to escape after 2 weeks, he was found in Florida after several days on the run and was sent back to the facility, where he received treatment until early 1984. He was then sent back to his mother. At this point, Joseph's first stepfather offered him a job, attempting to repair their relationship. However, starting in 1985, Joseph's mental state deteriorated again. He displayed misanthropic traits, refusing to accompany his stepfather to any fast food restaurants or other public places. And he demanded that food be delivered to him by truck and claimed that an unidentified malicious entity was tracking him. After a while, he left his stepfather and once again began hitchhiking across the country. In 1986, Joseph went to live with one of his half-brothers for several weeks. However, this brother had become a Jehovah's Witness after being released from prison 2 years prior, had gotten married, and had ceased all criminal activities, leading to arguments between the two, and Joseph eventually left. In June 1986, Joseph was arrested for illegally possessing a sawed-off shotgun. During his incarceration in the county jail, he exhibited signs of obsessive-compulsive disorder, constantly keeping his cell clean and washing his belongings multiple times a day. In September, Joseph pleaded guilty to an attempted theft charge and was sentenced to 5 years of probation. After his release, he left Michigan again and reappeared in Los Angeles, California by the end of 1986, marking the beginning of Joseph's murder spree. On April 2, 1993, after the final sentencing, Joseph was transferred to a death row cell at San Quentin State Prison. As time went on, his mental health continued to deteriorate. He often complained of hallucinations and pain caused by rats, but no traces of rats were found in his cell. Joseph also suffered from insomnia, frequently screaming at night and waking other prisoners from their sleep. He also often attacked prison guards, once pouring urine on a guard. Although his mental illness was known, he did not receive treatment until 2011. In 2004, Joseph's lawyer drafted an appeal, asking to overturn his death sentence and requesting a retrial. This was because during the second trial in 1993, 2 jurors sought advice from their parish clergy, a violation of the rules that juries should follow, as jurors are prohibited from discussing the case outside the courtroom. However, the appeal was rejected. In 2012, Joseph's family hired a lawyer to appeal his death sentence, asking for treatment for his mental disorder. However, the court did not make a final decision on this appeal. On March 13, 2019, the governor of California ordered a suspension of the death penalty in the state. This meant that although Joseph's death sentence remained valid due to the governor's order, he would not be executed. And his case and health continued to be monitored, especially since he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and antisocial personality disorder.